Why did Democrats decriminalize drugs? I call it infiltrate, destroy, rebuild. Shout out to CKY, by the way. But they come in, they say, we're going to decriminalize all these drugs. They get in power. They say, we're doing this great thing to help everyone, destroying everything, driving out businesses, shutting down mom and pop shops. And then once everything's been destroyed, they turn the switch back on, banning the drugs once again, but now they can take over and rebuild.
That is interesting way to look at it, if to think of it as malicious, which it might be in some instances. I've always thought of it as like a failed attempt at what they were doing in Portugal. In Portugal, they decriminalized drugs. But what they did in Portugal is they created this environment of rehabilitation where people could go and get clean. And they don't have that. They never did that in Oregon.
You would go to a dedicated place where they would give you limited drugs or clean methods. Here, they're like, nah, you can just go on the street and do whatever you want.
And they were, and that's what was happening. And I mean, it became a mess.
During the COVID lockdowns, Bill de Blasio was talking about buying buildings that had been basically destroyed by the lockdowns, economically destroyed, and turning them into public housing. Look where we are now. They've turned these luxury hotels into migrant shelters. It is infiltrate, destroy, rebuild. They go in through economic crises and failed policies. We go, oh, these Democrats are so dumb. Why are they doing this? Haha, their policies backfired on them. Didn't backfire on them. They intentionally wanted to gut the economy so they could buy. It's RoboCop.
It's like economic hitman model.
They come in, they destroy everything. Their buddies buy up the properties for pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. Then they turn the law back on, clean up the streets. But now they've shifted ownership away from the original generational wealth to newcomers.
Ooh, I'd like to see how much BlackRock bought in Oregon in the last 4 years.
100%. And there's actually an article on the Washington Examiner that came out on March 25th. And the title is How Blue Cities Are Making Crime Illegal Again. Right to your point there, right then and there, Tim, adding a little bit of credence to exactly what you're saying right then and there. And it's funny because a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, if you walk onto Union Station in Washington, D.C., trying to take a train to New York or wherever you're going, it was tent city. You couldn't walk 2 feet without seeing homeless people everywhere. I took a train back up to New Jersey to go home for Easter. I didn't notice as many tents out there as I normally did, potentially adding a little bit more credence to what you're saying.
I'm not saying in every circumstance it is quite literally a let's burn this down and then rebuild it for ourselves. But boy, does it certainly feel that way. And if we keep operating under the premise that Democrats keep slipping on banana peels, we're not going to see it coming when their buddies come and buy up these properties. I mean, you look at New York. De Blasio was saying during the COVID lockdowns, oh, the property values are destroyed. The businesses have been wiped out. No one's paying rent. Now we can buy these buildings for pennies on the dollar. It's intentional.
It has to be.
And I'm saying not in every circumstance, at least there, the dude was literally saying what he was intending to do.
And now we're seeing, we also that the Venezuelan migrant influencer who encouraged squatting now being under investigation. Watching Fox News today, all they were talking about was migrant squatting right then and there. Migrants going into your home, living there without you necessarily knowing, taking advantage without paying rent, without paying food, groceries. And that type of problem right then and there also speaks to a lot of different issues that Americans today are facing. High economic issues, large amounts of illegal immigration. You were talking about illegal migrants taking up resources in cities like New York. And now all of this is coming together into this issue of squatting that we're seeing in some of these big cities like Manhattan as well.
Yeah, along these lines, it's making me think of George Gascon, who I covered when I was in LA. And it was interesting because like after he actually got elected into office, he would talk about all the policies that he implemented on day one that were very destructive. And within several months, people started to see the after effects of these policies. And, you know, there were prisoners being released. There was one prisoner in particular, I can't remember his name, but he shot a cop, killed a cop, then he walked over and shot the cop in the badge. And then he was looking at like much decreased jail time. The cop's widow was one of the only people out there saying, this is crazy what's happening. And a lot of people were saying that George Gascon was running on false policies. And I was just like, I'm going to look into this and see if that's really the case. And I found an interview that he did, and he said, I did not lie about what I was going to do. I told you exactly what I was going to do. I told you throughout the campaign, you look at his campaign website, every single policy that he implemented, he said beforehand. So sometimes they just say it out loud.